Hello, welcome to the webinar, Innovation and Client Service with a Signature Experience. My name is Aileen Leventon. I'm principal at Edge International, and I will provide information on some of the mechanics you need, and then introduce my colleague, also of Edge International. Today's webinar requires you to understand a few simple things about the webinar platform. And to the extent that we do not allow time for Q&A or you don't get your question answered, we are extremely interested in being responsive. So please email us afterwards. Our information will be in a link you will receive. The recording will be available, so feel free to follow up. The participants in this panel are Michael White and Aileen Leventon. I focus primarily on project management, pricing, profitability. I tend to look at the operations side to make sure that a firm is well positioned to support its strategy in every dimension. And that's why I'm extremely interested in what Mike has to say, because he focuses on growth, he focuses on differentiation. So Mike, why don't you introduce yourself now?
Thank you, Aileen. I'm also a principal at Edge International, and I do focus on growth issues, as Aileen mentioned, usually taking the form of engagements related to strategic planning, lateral partner recruitment and integration, business development, consulting and coaching and training, and some other things that fall within the growth category. We're looking forward to speaking with you today about differentiation, which is through client experience and other areas, because trying to differentiate law firms at an institutional level as well as the individual lawyer level is a very elusive goal for practitioners and firms in the marketplace these days.
We call this the signature client experience because we want you to focus on the idea that everyone's signature is unique, and each firm needs to go beyond saying we are unique and be able to explain why they are unique, for everybody at the firm to have a clear perspective on the fact that I have squiggles, I have rounded letters versus I have straight up letters. Those are the characteristics that are hard to forge. That's what makes it unique. So think about that as you start thinking about what you do if you're in an operations role, and what the firm does in terms of the way it presents itself to clients. Now, the signature experience is how your firm delivers services that are unique to its operations, culture, and strategy. And we can't underestimate the significance of culture. That's something that's capable of being measured the same way you can measure your financial returns. And for more information on that, Mike can certainly tell you what's involved there. We think it's really important to consider the fact that a firm has both an external perspective, the way it's viewed from the outside, and an internal perspective, how it sees itself. So just pause for a second. This is a unique building. It's the Sydney Opera House. It's iconic. It stands both for the fact that it's a functional location for the performing arts, but it also stands for the fact that it's the entrance to the Sydney Harbor. It's the first thing you come in by water. It's the experience that a visitor has or a resident has when they're first encountering the city of Sydney. And it's unforgettable. It's differentiated. And that was done when it was built. And when it was built, they took great pains to make sure that all of the infrastructure was hidden from the outside, but was nevertheless there and critical to be able to support what one sees when it approaches this very special building. So, what does that mean in concrete terms when we start talking about your client experience to make it meaningful and different in kind? Mike, over to you on this one.
Yes, let's recognize one thing, and let's be honest. I'm a lawyer. Aileen's a lawyer, so we have some credibility in this realm, and I think we can all agree that while lawyers are very competent, capable, skilled professionals, one thing historically that firms and lawyers have done a very poor job of is differentiating themselves in the marketplace. And think about the pablum that you hear in the marketplace about why a given firm or a given lawyer is different and therefore arguably better. You'll hear things like, we're excellent. We emphasize excellence in ways that other law firms, I guess, don't. We staff cases leanly. We will communicate really well, and so on and so on. What it is a running stream of anecdotal conclusions that don't really mean anything. A, because all the other participants in the marketplace, other lawyers and law firms, say the same things. And B, there's no supportive evidence. There's nothing tangible and nothing concrete that goes into that conclusion. And prospects and clients in the marketplace in general are left with this fluff that they're supposed to hang their hat on when they decide whether to be more attracted to one firm or another. Now, contrast that with other professional services providers in the marketplace that do a really good job of differentiating themselves either individually or at an institutional level. Let's look at the management consulting industry. The iconic brand there would be McKinsey, but the very formidable competitors to McKinsey are BCG and Bain. All those firms do a really good job of differentiating themselves in the marketplace. McKinsey in particular. Now, let's talk about the ways in which they differentiate themselves. So McKinsey would be able to answer the question, how are you different and therefore better, very concretely and very effectively. And they would do as follows. Number one, we all hire really, really, really smart people. I can't tell you that the individual recruit with a 3.8 from Harvard that we hire is necessarily any smarter than the recruit from Harvard that Bain or BCG hires with the same GPA, or maybe they're from Stanford or MIT. But what they can say is that in addition to raw processing power and smarts, what they look for is a set of personality attributes that they're confident that their competition does not look for. And they may have 7 to 10 personality features or attributes they run their candidates through and look for in order to find someone who's a particularly good fit. Now, they would say that someone with that intelligence combined with those personality features over time, over the next 10 to 15 years, will become a more insightful consultant. And because of that, it confers a unique benefit on a client. Another example that they would say in response to that question is, we have our core workhorse, our core piece of work product is a document called a study. Now, a study is a term of art in the world of McKinsey, and it connotes and denotes a number of features that only they know. Now, they're very dogmatic about the way studies are created, and they produce studies when they feel like they need to get a baseline understanding of a business and provide some recommendations. Their competition, BCG and Bain, don't have a piece of output called a study or something that they would use a term of art for to caption. The title of that document or output is something that's dependent upon the given circumstances and the nature of their engagement with a given client. Now, McKinsey will say that their methodology that informs their production of a study produces a better set of insights for their clients. And for that reason, they believe it's more insightful. And they would also identify, 15, 16 other attributes that make them different. Notice what they're relying on here. They're relying on inputs that could be perceptible to clients, but in a lot of cases, they're not perceptible to clients. but they know indirectly over time they confer benefit on clients and help them do a, quote, better job. Concrete, non-abstract, objective, articulable, specific. These are the kinds of features that allow them to say, we deliver a different and better and more innovative client experience in ways that our competition does not do that. Law firms should adopt these kinds of approaches when they try and differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Respect your clients, respect your prospects, and educate them about all those inputs, the McKinsey way, so to speak, that they may not be able to see when they consume your output or make use of your recommendations, but when you educate them about it, they can easily give you credit for it. This is what we mean by producing a level of differentiation that's different in kind rather than degree. Now let's talk a little bit about examples of some of the different layers of differentiation. The gotta-haves, the table stakes, are doing a good job, being a good lawyer, meeting the client's needs at a basic level as it relates to the delivery of legal output. You've structured a deal well, you've delivered an acceptable or very good result for a piece of litigation, you've been insightful as it relates to delivering some insights from a regulatory perspective. You got to do that. All right, so that's just meeting the needs of the client. Then you've got the wanna-haves. Those are things like, in addition to meeting their technical needs and expertise needs, you're able to explain to your client why you've done a good job. You're able to report to your client, who in turn may need to report to other people internally, why the job you did confers unique benefit. You'll see a lot of the best litigation firms who are known for their trial advocacy and work in the courtroom also are very good at reporting on how good a job they do across all the cases they're managing. Because in the C-suite, and when you're working in an in-house law department, you're having to explain across a portfolio of cases why all of them are trending well and why all of them are working across the portfolio, not just delivering great outcomes in individual cases. So those are value drivers at a wanna-have level. Now, what are the differentiators at sort of a wow level? Well, I'll give you one example. I had a client, full-service law firm, competing to get some work from a large Global 1000 telecommunications provider. Now, their access point was a litigation manager inside the law department. The litigation manager was not necessarily looking for a new litigator to handle a portion of his portfolio, because actually the portfolio was working pretty well and he was getting some pretty good outcomes on the litigation he was managing. But during the course of the dialogue, during the courtship, so to speak, my client started talking to this litigation manager about what was going on inside the business, and in particular what he was doing, and also over time what he wanted to do over time. And the litigation manager was very upfront about his career management goals and where he wanted to be in 2 years, 3 years. And he said, you know, I'd really like to be a transactional lawyer. Actually, I not only want to be a transactional lawyer, I want to be in the corporate development department for my company so that I'm actually sourcing the deals for the businesses that our telecom company would be acquiring. And actually, I'd have an in-house lawyer in our law department who does the transactional work actually do the deals. So he wanted to make 2 steps, go from being a litigator to a transactional lawyer, and then from being a transactional lawyer to becoming a corporate development professional, the internal client, so to speak. And he did not have a strategy for making those leaps. My client, the law firm, learned through, frankly, some of the advice I gave him, that a great hook here was to help that in-house litigation manager cross some of those bridges. And he said, why don't we train you up on some tax law? We'll give you some CLE exposure in the tax area, partnership tax and corporate tax, off the clock. And you'll use that as a way to gain standing with your in-house transactional lawyers to work on some deals. And then once you're the deal lawyer, maybe the next step is you can actually move over to the corporate development department. So my client learned about the personal professional needs of the litigation manager, came up with a strategy to help him advance those goals, towards those goals, and actually help them do some very powerful things to promote him or himself over time. Now, guess what happened in very short order? My client, the law firm, got a new piece of litigation, not because the litigation manager was looking for a new litigator, so to speak, but the law firm had made itself invaluable and professionally intimate with that litigation manager in very unique ways. Now, that's the wow. That's the gotta have, okay? And that's a way to differentiate yourself. Another example is in the area of, I call it the whole product. Clients, of course, have always wanted good outcomes, good documents for deals, and good advice on regulatory matters. But when they think of the whole product, they want the journey to be effective and well managed. So clients don't always know what a great outcome is, but you can talk to the client and land on what that might look like. But the journey to get at that agreed upon good outcome needs to be well managed, disciplined, and have some guardrails associated. And that's where matter management comes into play. And that's where firms that are really good at legal project management and matter management, making sure there's a set of guardrails applied to the matter, and allowing the client to repose a great deal of trust in the law firm that no hour will be invested casually in his or her matter. That's highly differentiating. Now, there are a lot of firms in the legal project management and matter management business these days, but not a lot of firms are doing it really well. I wouldn't say that it's a wow, but it's probably a wanna have. And in some instances, it's a gotta have. But if you can do that, you're supporting the whole product. You're not just delivering great outcomes and legal expertise, but you're causing the client to conclude that the journey is very optimized and effective in and of itself, beyond just the outcome and the output.
That's a really important point. Mike. And I know a number of folks who are in the project management function and the pricing function, and they frequently feel like they're being treated as back office folks dealing with that messy stuff, budgeting and reporting. But in fact, from a client point of view, a lot of them are really front office kind of people. Clients expect them to be on the pitch. Clients expect the firm to demonstrate that they have a disciplined approach to scoping the work and bringing the matter in on time, on budget, consistent with managing expectations. So it's really important for folks who are in those kind of operational roles to be working closely with the biz dev and marketing people, and the folks who are focusing on client service to be able to provide an integrated base on behalf of the firm, where it's the total package that the client experiences, and it's the total package that the firm itself appreciates as how its infrastructure and its substantive legal work are delivered together. Now, Mike, you've got a fantastic framework for thinking about all the elements for the differentiators for a law firm. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, you're looking at a slide that has a lot to it. And before you sort of engage with this slide very deeply, I like to encourage my clients to think sort of at three levels when they think about differentiating the client experience, okay? So the first level is somewhat conventional, and that's what are the features of what we do technically that are just really good or really different, that are perceptible to our clients when they rely upon us and consume our services in those areas. So if we're just remarkably good in the courtroom, think Boyce Schiller, Sussman Godfrey, Bartlett Beck, there are a lot of features about who they are and what they do as trial lawyers that are highly differentiated at a pure excellence level. It's important to inventory those attributes and make sure everyone in your firm understands them and is able to articulate them. So that's sort of level one differentiation. Level two are features about what you do okay, in delivering your service that are highly differentiating, that are perceptible to your clients. Okay, matter management is a good example. Okay, your ability to understand the business of your client really well and bringing your client into that experience as you're learning about them, so that you set an expectation with them and create a perception in their mind that, wow, I'm not just getting raw legal expertise in a vacuum here. There's a great deal of understanding of our context that informs this expertise, okay? And that's different. So inventory those features about the way you do what you do that is perceptible to clients when they consume your service. And then finally, a third level is referring back to what I said at the front end. What are the things you do about the way you make your sausage that would not be perceptible to your clients when they're consuming your service? Things like the way you recruit talent, the way you develop talent, the way you require talent to be understanding of things that aren't related to core legal expertise, but are very related to the delivery of the service. So maybe all your lawyers are very knowledgeable about technology and the deployment of technology, or the way your lawyers are trained on how to understand basic MBA concepts at a business level that are unrelated to legal work, but very linked to legal work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are aspects of how you develop your human capital, how you make your sausage that would not be perceptible to your clients, but confer a value to your client in very meaningful ways. You have to educate your clients about that. So you ought to inventory those features, put them down on paper, and make your clients aware of them once you understand them as an institution internally.
Mike, that sounds really daunting. How do you get started with something like that? Well,
we're going to talk a little bit about putting together a playbook. But before I talk about the playbook, look at some of these aspects about sort of how a firm makes its sausage. Okay, you've got management systems, operating capabilities, and somewhat proprietary assets. Okay, the way your firm is structured. All right, let's take that one aspect. That's a very, most firms are either not, they're very modest about the way their firms are structured, but some firms are structured in such a way that's very well aligned with clients, and they ought to brag about it. For firms that are skeptical or cynical about the amount of leverage, they feel like their firm is inclined to throw at every legal problem and engagement. And therefore, they've got junior lawyers, worker bees, generating a lot of profits for the law firm, doing tasks that they may not be optimized for, and therefore they may not be effective or efficient. For clients that view their matters in that way, if they're working with a firm that is not highly leveraged, well, that firm ought to educate the client about their lack of leverage. Talk about your cost structure. If you're a firm that manages its costs in such a way that you keep more of every dollar, well, educate your client about that. It's okay to make, to be a highly functioning, profitable business and law firm. The clients just don't want it done at their expense. And if you're able to generate that profitability through a low-cost model, such that all of a sudden you're keeping more of every dollar, your clients will respect that, and it'll give you more room to do things for your clients in the area of alternative fees and different billing structures. Okay, so brag about your structure. Knowledge management. If you've got a wonderful knowledge management system, but it's only being enjoyed by your lawyers, make it available to your clients, or at least educate them about it. It's okay to be in the business of providing bespoke legal services, but some wisdom and insights clients would be happy to consume in a less bespoke kind of way. If you've got a product or some knowledge management insights that they can access on their own without a lawyer having to go to the library and come up with some tailored, personalized insight on the fly, then give them access to that. So these elements here that you see in this slide are all potential areas of differentiation, either because they relate to the way you make your sausage or deliver your insights that may not be perceptible to clients when they consume them, or they may be differentiators that are perceptible to your clients that they're capable of giving you a great deal of credit for.
That's a fantastic roadmap, by the way, of an operating structure for any professional services firm. McKinsey certainly has it. When I was a partner at PwC, we certainly had it. And we thought about it in these different bands. And we made conscious decisions about whether we were going to merge some of these and categorize some of them as subcategories, or that we were going to do them standalone. But the point here is that it was conscious. And that's where I think your playbook concept comes in being explicit and making conscious choices that you're choosing to share with others.
Yeah, really good point. And I view the playbook as sort of the workhorse of client experience, innovation, and differentiation. In part because there are so many levels on which you need to do a much better job. Think of firms that don't do a good job of articulating why they're different and better. When you ask the individual lawyers why they may be different or better, a couple things happen. Number one, you get anecdotal, generalized, conclusory responses that don't mean anything because they're not supported with evidence or concrete concepts, or they're things that other firms are saying, so they're not differentiating. And the other thing is the individual lawyers in a firm will all say different things in response to that question, so there's no consistency. They're not able to reinforce or articulate a brand or support a brand because they're giving different answers to the question. So how do you get your internal people, your internal advocates, your delivery resources, your lawyers to literally be on the same page? Well, you've got to put together a playbook that first and foremost is designed for internal consumption, but in so doing, once you document it and they learn about the playbook and they participate in creating the playbook, they're able to put something together that's for external consumption. And all of a sudden, the market, the prospects, and lawyers will give you credit for it. Now, what you're looking at here is an example playbook structure, okay? And I've got it broken down into 4 categories. Now, this happens to be a litigation practice group or a litigation boutique. Now, what they've done is they've identified, with our help, 4 categories in which they want to differentiate themselves and they want their lawyers sort of focused on. Number 1 is litigation strategy trial prep. All right, that's what are the elements of what they do as trial lawyers and litigators at a technical level that are fundamentally different. All right, now one of the items under within this category, and there might be 10 items or 15 items. One of them might be we've got a really great story in terms of the number of the outcomes we've delivered when cases have been brought to trial. We win more cases, and we can talk about our win-loss ratio in those terms, and it's very impressive. Another one is how they prepare for trial in very unique ways. And one element that they would cite is they sort of reverse engineer from the trial going backwards about how the opposition's case is being put together. And they literally reverse engineer it, and they break it apart, and they come up with a strategy for each of the re-engineered elements that they define. And then they put their own trial strategy together based upon that re-engineering process. It's very unique, and it's very thoughtful. And a client can give them credit for being more thoughtful and better prepared in their cases. And they might have 10 or 15 other attributes about their trial preparation and technical excellence that they are able to cite. Everybody knows about it, and they're all able to articulate it when they're asked the question, why are you different or better? Second category is conferring value beyond just at the matter level, beyond just technical excellence. And in there, they might talk about, we're able to articulate return on investment in a very thoughtful, specific way that our other law firms and lawyers we compete against are not able to articulate. And notice how that resonates with business people, all right? They've been around firms that purport to be technically excellent, but when they think about the investment associated with creating that great outcome, sometimes all they have is a great artist that creates a good outcome, but they've invested way too much in generating that outcome that they don't have confidence that the journey is going to be well managed. Well, conferring value beyond just good outcomes is, at the matter level, is something this law firm in particular was able to define very specifically, and they probably had 10 other attributes or features. Another thing they talked about is helping their litigation clients who engage them to be great trial counsel. They also engage them to help them manage risks that could become litigation at the earliest stages so that they don't have those litigations or those fires to put out down the road. The third category is sort of at the relationship development, non-matter level. What is it the firm does to understand the business they're working with that's engaged them to handle litigation at an enterprise level? And in that case, they turn themselves into a consigliere. And one way that this firm did that is they required their clients, their in-house lawyers, to give them the annual plan that their business put together every year as part of their planning cycle. Now, when a client goes through a planning process, the law department, as well as all the other functional pieces of that business, put together a plan for their functional area. Well, my client, the law firm, the litigation shop, was insisting that their clients give them the benefit of that plan so that they can understand all the priorities that not just the law department was required to focus on coming out of that planning process, but all of the internal clients of the law department were required to focus on. So the law department that was engaging them to do litigation was also working with a lot of the internal departments of that business, the IT department, the marketing department, the finance department, et cetera. And it was almost as if the litigation firm was advising the in-house law department and how they could be a consigliere to their internal clients. But in so doing, the litigation firm was also learning a lot about what was going on at that business generally, not just at a matter level. Very, very differentiating mindset and bias. Then finally, this playbook calls for the law firm to give their clients that have engaged them to work on litigation the benefit of all of the, quote, product development and service offering development work that the law firm is putting together. So in all the areas where the law firm is creating new products and capabilities, real time, they do a really good job of making that transparent to their clients so that they not only can see that product development effort real time as it's being developed, but they're also able to inform it. So think of a law firm that's coming up with new and better ways to manage matters, all right? And they're evolving their legal project management capability in very meaningful ways. If the client knows about how they're engaging in that product development and that capability development, they can make it better themselves and inform it. So this is the playbook that is put together and documented so that everyone in the firm, first and foremost, knows why the firm is different or the practice group is different, so they can articulate it in a consistent, specific way. And then when they go out in the marketplace, they can educate the market, their clients, and their prospects about it.
And this is the sort of thing that is done under the McKinsey way. And this is actually the sort of thing that I saw regularly while I was a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I think about that a lot as we're dealing with the entry of the accounting firms into the practice of law, what I would call the multidisciplinary approach to law practice that you see extensively among practitioners outside the United States, where they're teaming with other service providers. And it all speaks to the necessity of having deep business knowledge and appreciation of the business perspective. So that gets us into the whole strategy for how do you develop the signature experience when you're thinking about what you're offering in addition to how you're offering it. And that's where, we typically think in terms of area of law or industry, but the more important part is zeroing in on how you can support your client's business opportunities. And if you don't really understand your client's business, you wouldn't know an opportunity when you saw it, and you'd be reactive rather than participating in trying to help shape business success in a way that matters to the client in a tangible way. Now, Mike, you and I have kicked around some ideas about that. I've told you about some work that I've done with the American Bar Association Task Force on Legal Project Management and M&A, and some of the work we've done in focusing on how to do the deal and how it then bleeds into what happens post-closing, or post-merger integration. And you've mentioned to me some fantastic examples of firms that have really done spectacularly well in demonstrating their value to clients because of the way they've harnessed that expertise. Mike?
Yes. So we've talked a lot about the less perceptible inputs into how you do what you do as a law firm and as an individual lawyer, and inventorying them and educating clients and prospects about those things that confer direct or indirect value. The getting deeply literate about a client's business and responding to that literacy in ways that allows you to add value. A great example is in the M&A area a long time ago, Baker McKenzie decided that what they learned from working with private equity firms and corporate acquirers of businesses on the corporate development side, they learned that their clients cared very deeply about things that happened in the M&A process well after they, as the law firm, sort of left the closing table. All right. So up until that point, Baker and McKenzie was focusing on, helping the client with their due diligence process, identifying risks to the deal, structuring the deal, and then documenting the deal based on the structures they came up with, and then getting to the closing table and declaring victory if it closed. And then they would typically move on to the next client that had another deal to do. All right. Now, when the client was asked, how do you define success or failure? They would say, well, our work's only just beginning now, after they leave the closing table, because that's when they had to integrate the business they just acquired. And they were engaging in a lot of hard work that if they didn't engage in it or didn't do it well, they would fail. If they did it well, they would succeed. So that was all dependent upon prospective activity. Now, that's prospective activity that historically law firms, M&A lawyers, didn't get involved with, because the M&A lawyers thought, well, that's for the big four accountant to handle. That's for the management consultant. Accenture is going to come in and help our client with that, or internal people are going to do that. The IT people and the process authoring people will do that. It isn't our job. Now, Baker and McKenzie decided this is a great opportunity to differentiate their M&A capability. And what they did is they insinuated themselves very deeply into the 12 to 18 month integration process that was occurring post-closing and post-acquisition. And as a result, they had a highly differentiated brand in the marketplace. And their clients recognized it, and they got more work as a result of it. Another good example is in the litigation area, sort of at the other extreme. Litigators, of course, are great at dealing with risks after they go awry and they result in fires and litigation. But litigators are very bad at putting relationships in place earlier on in the process. Now, a great way to do that is to get involved in a client's risk assessment, risk management process, which is a feature of the annual planning cycle. And litigators know what risks look like when they go bad. It stands to reason they look like risks, what risks look like at the front end before they go bad. So getting involved in the risk management process with Marsh, Aon, Willis, and the risk management consultants, as well as the big four consultants, is a really good way for litigators to insinuate themselves into business issues in a way that makes total sense, collaborating with other providers.
Now, you used the word insinuate. I think that you're really talking about integrate. And when you focus on this framework of innovation, you've basically unpacked everything that previously had been integrated. So tell us a little more about that.
This slide is really a good, pretty simple graphic about how legal services have been unbundled from law firms. But law firms that are understanding of the different providers of legal services, whether they be e-discovery providers or alternative legal services providers or big four accounting firms providing tax work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or technology providers handling process-driven pattern and routine work. Law firms that are aware of all that can differentiate themselves through their own innovation efforts. Law firms that are very boned up on technology and affirmatively taken an interest in being a technology provider in intelligent ways can differentiate their client experience. For example, look at the three activators of innovation here: technology, productization, and process. Law firms that are innovating through activators in the way they deliver their service are able to differentiate themselves and their experience very meaningfully. So look at the ways that the legal market is innovating generally and adopt some of those methods and those activators in making your experience different.
So thinking about developing a signature experience, we'd like to turn now to how do you put client business needs at the center of it all? It's not just industry, it's not just area of law, it's not just the geographic location you're in, it's what are the client's business needs? And what I'd like to do now is turn to some case studies that give you an example of how several law firms have aligned with their clients in focusing on what is their client's product, what is their client's service, what are their client's business needs, and they do it in a multidisciplinary way. That's a theme that I keep coming back to. We typically think about the client has a legal matter and there's a legal issue, and we have to figure out who the subject matter experts are. And that's very much an internal, substantive way of thinking about it that's totally appropriate. But in aligning with clients, how can you reframe that in terms of what the client's business opportunity and challenge is? So I'll give you now a couple of examples. Some are simple, some are complex, about how some firms have done this extremely successfully. And then if you want more, the FT does an innovative lawyer's profile every year, and you can easily obtain that and find many examples year after year. So to start, I like to focus on Aaron Fox, DC-based firm, focusing on the fashion industry. But it's more than the fashion industry. It's about lifestyle. It's about luxury. It's about what fashion does for you. And it's about getting into that mindset of what makes people in that business tick. Now, obviously, the lead partner on the matter is always dressed in his client's products, some of which may not be consistent with typical law firm business casual, but he does a fabulous job of it, and he makes it look like he's totally integrated with his client. He's thinking like his client as he's representing them. And what are the substantive areas that make up fashion law? Well, it turns out it's nothing unique that a law firm doesn't already provide. It's IP, it's bankruptcy, it's contracting, it's litigation, it's import-export, fashion law, a different way of presenting that to an industry so that the industry feels you're talking their language, not being treated like an interesting package of legal issues. Because the legal issues are means to achieve the client's end, not the end in itself from the client's perspective. And then here's another industry, which is both a product and a service. Cannabis. Is it how it makes you feel? Is it how it makes you money? Is it how you're dealing with the fact that it's illegal from a federal point of view, but legal in a couple of states? What do we need to do to create new markets? That's legislation and lobbying. And legislation and lobbying is about getting things done in the states where things don't already happen, where you're dealing with financiers, where you're dealing with manufacturers, where you're dealing with operators. So there are several firms that are positioning themselves in this area, some to greater extents than others. And there's even one that we're aware of that has boots on the ground in as many states as it can to foster legislation and lobbying, and we'll keep those boots on the ground when it's legal in that state, and they will be there first, and they will be leveraging the experiences that they acquired through their expertise, but their deep knowledge of the industry. And they're part of a network that helps people in the industry network with each other. Hogan Lovells has done a great job with unmanned aircraft systems, UAS. For those who don't know what that is, it's that course we all took in law school, drone law. Well, there is no drone law, but drones are a product. They are a way of approaching commerce. They exist in the military. It's a multidisciplinary thing, a system. It's got technology, it's got people, it's got process, and all of that is brought together in formulating it as an interdisciplinary practice area. So what are the disciplines? Very similar to what we talked about before for the fashion industry. Those are practice groups you already have. IP, corporate, data privacy, export, public policy. And what they've done in formulating this group is they've looked at the world from a client's point of view. What is the client's product? And how can we bring the legal expertise to bear? But they don't position it as come to the IP practice and see if there's a subcategory in there for drones. It's presented in terms of what is tangible to the client, which is namely the product or the service. Another example is trade. Verrill and Dana is based in Portland, Maine. They have offices in Boston as well. Maine-based firm. Portland is a seaport. Portland actually will be the gateway for trade going east through the Arctic, to the extent that there's a surge in transit and with the polar ice cap melting. So taking that into consideration, how does one capitalize on the identification of a global reality? How does one capitalize on the geography of where the firm is positioned relative to that international trade issue? And how do you deal with the fact that it's going to raise new markets, new opportunities? Answer: form a trade association. Become the home for that trade association. Become the place where everybody knows you're not just supporting it because of your interest in serving your existing clients, but you're also advancing the network of everyone else who's interested in it. It promotes the firm's business development, but it also promotes both a showcase and access for the firm's thought leadership. This one is my last illustration. It's about Voorhees Sater. Voorhees Sater is a Midwest law firm that has a intellectual property practice. And they started noticing a pattern in that IP practice that as business became more digital, they no longer were dealing with counterfeiting and gray goods issues to be able to protect manufacturer suggested retail price. They started dealing with price cutting and alternate distribution channels online. So part of what one sees when you go to Amazon and you see that they're representing different resellers and the different resellers have different prices, well, some of those prices are probably are legitimate, but some may not be. And that's when the retailer becomes very concerned that it's not just volume or discount pricing that's resulting in a reduction of the price they're expecting to see, but something else is going on. So what's the business problem that the client here has? And you're dealing with online sellers, whether it's Gap, whether it's John Deere, whether it's the guy down the road from me, who's selling pies and cakes online and baking them out of his house. The answer is price protection, no. It's margin protection. They've got a cost of goods, and for them to make their margin, they need to be able to make sure that it's sold at a certain price. So what did Voorhees do? They went from being reactive, writing cease and desist letters when folks came along, to being proactive and creating a subscription service. They teamed with others in a multidisciplinary manner, others who were not bringing their legal expertise, but their online savvy. And they identified ways to do their own trolling online, searching for opportunities to say, gee, we proactively found situations where your MSRP is being undercut, and we can protect you from illegal online sellers. We can use technology mechanisms through a joint venture with technology experts who can figure out the IP address, who can post the cease and desist letter through Twitter and Facebook. And what they've done is gone from having a handful of these reactive opportunities to building out a subscription service across a significant number of retailers. This won the Innovaction Award at the College of Law Practice Management in 2017. And it really stirred a lot of interest because it brought together sales, marketing, technology. It brought together substantive law practice, all in a single point of contact, and became a really intriguing way to merge the business of law and the practice of law in a way that has now significantly increased the footprint of the firm with access to directors of sales and marketing in retailers that they might not have otherwise had access to, but for affirmatively offering a product and a service to the market versus specialized legal expertise. If you're interested in joining the entry process for the College of Law Practice of Management, by the way, it's open right now. Check it out. So, Mike, go ahead. You had some thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, quick point. Notice how the Voorhees example, among other things, relies upon those three elements of innovation referred to in the last slide. Product, they've created a product. They've relied on technology and implemented it through technology. And they've also been able to support a process. And the fourth thing they've done in addition to those three elements is notice that they're taking on some expertise that falls outside of the legal realm and falls within the business realm, so that they're able to provide sort of a cradle to grave solution. Really interesting. Go ahead, Aileen. I've got two other examples I want to bring up. Why don't you mention?
I don't have anything more to add on this. My point was just to try to give some concrete illustrations to many of the things and the great ideas you talked about. And I wanted to demonstrate that, you know, these are just 4 or 5 examples of firms where I know folks at these firms. I know folks who have done some of the things that are talked about here. I'm really enthusiastic about them, but you know quite a few too, Mike. What do you have in mind?
Yeah, there are 2 others that are noteworthy, but great examples. One is Hall and Render out of Indianapolis, that has just given a bear hug to the healthcare industry. I encourage you to go to their website and notice how completely and granularly they have defined what they do in the healthcare space that often goes beyond just legal work, but it certainly covers all the legal bases. And then the other firm is Davis and Gilbert that does the same thing in a functional area, not an industry sector, namely marketing and marketing services. In both instances, giving their areas of focus a bear hug has a mechanical benefit in terms of business development because it allows them to get close to all the other providers that similarly target those industries and those areas of focus that aren't law firms, like investment bankers, accounting firms, business insurance brokers, executive recruiters, management consultants that focus on those spaces. And when they get close to those third parties that similarly focus on those areas, they're able to get access to their relationships and gain reach into their prospect base. So it is a mechanical value from a business development perspective.
Well, I'm going to wrap up at this point, and then as a webinar, we take Q&A, but this is pre-recorded webinar on demand, so we welcome your reaching out to us and asking us specific questions for follow-up. And of the 4 things that we'll wrap up with, a quarter of them relates to an issue that's top of mind for me, which is margins and value. You know, the same IP offering can get a premium price if it's packaged in a different kind of way. So as you think about how you're differentiating yourself, it's not just you were able to do it, but you're able to identify how you can do it profitably at greater margins and delivering more value. You're going to be exposed in terms of your economic results as well as your market positioning. And the other 3 are very much focused on the growth that is part and parcel of Mike's expertise. So Mike, why don't you elaborate on the other 3?
Sure, and think of those last 2 firms I mentioned, Hall and Render, Davis Gilbert, and many other examples. They don't have a lot of discussions with their clients about rates because the value they confer is so perceptible because of their intimacy with the functional area they're focused on or the industry they're focused on. Understanding all the different ways that your clients execute business, some of which produce legal symptoms, but many of those ways relate to underlying business activities. And understanding all that and taking the time to marshal that context puts you in a position to really deliver a signature client experience, a differentiated client experience. And clients will give you credit for that, and they'll appreciate it, and they'll view you as differentiated. Process and integration are really important, and you're getting a lot of credit these days from clients for managing the science of legal services delivery. They will think you're delivering a great result if the journey that got them there was well managed and very process driven. Conversely, if the journey is painful, expensive, ill-disciplined, unmanaged, but as an artist, you happen to do a good job at trial and get a good result, their perception of the job you did is still at some risk. And then finally, new prospects, to the extent you're able to explain to them in the form of a playbook, all right, objective, concrete, elemental, specific, focused, all of the inputs and outputs that make you different and therefore better. If you document that and you educate your clients and prospects about that, they will give you credit for that, even if they haven't experienced your service yet, which is a very challenging thing to do. But the playbook is a way for you to gain credit for these areas of differentiation, even before a prospect has engaged you and experienced your service.
Okay, we look forward to your questions, comments, and we'll respond to you as quickly as we can. Our contact information is included in this package, and we hope that we'll get feedback from you in terms of what we did well, what we could have done better, and whether you're interested in more webinars from Edge International, which does business all over the world. Thank you very much.